Fear and sweat run down your forehead as the last of you dives into the ruins. You're in the Darkwoods, a forest where light rarely gets past the dense canopy. A primordial forest whose brightest midday is like a winter's dusk. And something is after you. You look to the rest of the party and take count of how many are still with you. There's the three of you, and then there are 5 red shirts that are in various stages of like having pissed themselves. You'd entered the Darkwoods at the behest of Clara, a burly woman in her 30s with a horrendous set of scars left by wounds that she shouldn't have survived. And actually only survived the last session because magical healing. 4 weeks before this mission, she and her father had been among the only survivors of a demonic attack at a nearby outpost. The beast had cut through the garrison soldiers like a hot knife through butter, but before it left, it gave a command. Ever since the Civil War, the regime had made a deal with the demons who lived in places like the Darkwoods. In exchange for human sacrifices, the demons would empower the regime. The beast's command was that the demons no longer wanted sacrifices in their names. Kara's father, once a general of renown during the time of the Civil War, went to the leaders of the regime to tell them what he had seen. The last report that Kara had gotten is that her father had been marched into the Darkwoods, either to be a sacrifice or to come back with proof. Kara arranged a group to save him. For reasons of your choice, you were part of that group. But one of the dangers of the Darkwoods, a pet of the demon, attacked. You didn't get a good look at it during the moment, but the overwhelming darkness mixed by the screams and splatters of blood as it attacked your fellows was more than ample evidence of its malicious intent. You and the rest of your group have been cut off from the larger party and have found refuge in the stone ruins of what looks like a compound that dates back to the First Age. It seems that the monster has stopped its pursuit. And that's where we open up. The Darkwoods I would describe as, it's almost as if the trees themselves like eat the light. So everything is in this eternal shadow. It is darker than a forest should be. And you guys would have entered in the light of the day, so like this is probably around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it looks like dusk. To the point that the animal sounds of the Darkwoods also sounds like dusk, just, you know. So the ruins around you, the compound, you can't quite see how big it is. It looks like it's been overgrown. There's a stone wall structure that goes around it that's maybe at the points where it's still up is about 15 to 20 feet tall. But there are areas where a tree has crashed down over it or things like that. There are vines and like overgrowth that has just kind of like permeated throughout. There are very few buildings that don't have some sort of foliage growing on, in, or around them. The compound has a number of buildings that you haven't had a chance to really like get your bearings. When we start, you guys are just on the other side. There's a gate that in the heat of trying to escape whatever it was that was chasing you, you slam the gate shut. Now, that having been said, from this point on, it is sandbox. So if your response is, okay, well, we regroup and then we go back, we open the gate, then we go the fuck back out, that's your call. So yeah, that's where you are. You three might have known each other. You might not know each other very well. The red shirts that are with you um, are not used to this much physical exertion, and so they are panting and leaning against the wall. There's something about the stonework, like Dalton, you wouldn't recognize this, but for Maurice and Daz, um, it, you can barely make out in certain areas symbols that date back to the early history of your world that give a sense of safety, right? So think of it like you don't actually know whether or not these walls would stop the beast that attacked you, but it feels like um, you stumbled across a church, and there is a sense, whether it's realistic or not, of sanctuary. Um, and so the red shirts, being largely more superstitious, probably, and with less free will and agency, are just fully embraced. They don't even give it a second thought. They are safe now. They are collapsing, and um, like it's going to take them a while to bring themselves back together. And they sure as hell are, like going to be nervous doing anything else. So you three, by virtue of the fact that you are still standing, are the de facto leaders. And it's your go.
Um, I, I'm just using kind of my knowledge of tactics. What does this building look very defensible? Like, could you kind of use that? I'm not sure exactly what we're fighting, but something to stand behind and attack from. And
Okay. So, yeah. Um, as you're glancing around, you get the sensation that this compound was not built for defense. So, for example, there are tall walls. I mentioned like about 20 feet tall stone walls. There aren't like guard posts or towers or anything like that that would make that particularly defensible. It looks more like a demarcation. The strategic weaknesses, anything that can get up into the trees, there are parts where the trees are grown over the walls.
right.
So by no means is it perfectly secure.
Did
That
we
having
get the
been said,
sense?
oh, go ahead.
I was just say, did we get the sense that the creature flies?
Um, it's hard to say. The sensation that you had during the initial attack was that it seemed to come from nowhere, and almost like a a shadowy mist that took physical form as it attacked, and then wove in and out of everybody. So like you'd be standing there, and you would hear the person behind you um, being mauled, and then you would feel this rush of cold darkness all around you, almost as if you were in the middle of this creature as it went through you and attacked the person in front of you. So it kind of like coalesces into physical form.
Sure. Uh, Dalton will take a full minute of hyper, vigilance,
Okay.
and if he goes a full minute without any creature attacking, he will start taking a look at the ruins, and specifically, the first question that's going to enter his mind is, uh, and you can wait on this; it's not super important. But the first question he has is, does the darkness affecting plant magic stuff light affecting plant magic stuff, has that seeped into the ruins since the ruins have been here for so long? Or does it stick to only the plant life and what he assumes would be any animal life that actually exists here, demonstrating that it requires some form of life to attach to?
Sure. I'll get to that in just a sec. But
Yeah,
like you
take your
said,
time.
you're
It's not
taking a moment to kind of
Yeah,
make sure that nothing is attacking you,
right.
which is a very valid move. So Maurice is looking for the defenses.
Yes.
Steven is basically, preparing himself to dive out of the way of an attack any second now. What's Staz up to?
So are the ruins a single open area, or are there smaller rooms or alcoves, things like that?
There are a number of buildings throughout. And from where you've entered, there is a central building that's right in front of you, but you can kind of see that there are smaller buildings behind it. So you get the feeling that, and you're not sure how big the ruins are, but the basic idea that you get at first glance is that between the symbols and just the way things are built, this looks like it was once a religious location. And you get the feeling that this first building is the building that the travelers would have stopped at, and that behind it or beyond it are the buildings of the people who would have lived in the compound and the things they were doing.
Okay, well, I think in accordance with that, my initial reaction would be to examine the area and see if there were any provisions or things left behind, if there's anything of use to us in the immediate area.
Sure.
Our main building, but just taking a look around our environment.
Okay. So for a 19 on your search, the first thing about it is in terms of like provisions and stuff like that. I mean, this place has probably been left to ruin for a couple of centuries at least. So you're not going to find like rations just kind of hanging out. There are remnants of statues, but they're degraded, like stone statue. There's not a whole lot that you can take from that. The main building directly in front of you, it looks like it once would have had wooden doors, but they're long since gone, and so it's just an open doorway into a dark room that for a 19 you're able to glance through it, and it looks like from without entering, just from a distance, it kind of looks like there are a number of alcoves in that building, and that have like some of them still have pedestals, so like there are things in the alcove that might have been centers of worship, and there are the remnants of we'll go ahead and make them out of stone. So there are a series of seats, those long bench seats, that are pointed towards what you would presume would be a speaking spot. That's kind of hard to see from where you are. But so you're not seeing a lot of practical things to use. But for a 19, you are 100. Like, this was a religious building.
Do we have torches packed with us?
Yes. Yeah, going into the Darkwoods, it would make sense for you guys to have torches. And on that note, like I mentioned that the room is dark, right? There's very little light in it, but it's brighter than the forest is, right? So like you look back into the heart of the, or you think back because the walls are there. You think back to like walking through the forest, and it was like being almost underground at times. And you look into this room that has almost no light source, just like a little bit of sunlight reflecting in from around it, and it's a pleasant light shadow, as opposed to this like void that is trying to creep into the world. um, which will actually okay. So Stephen, go ahead and what was your question? It was about the nature of the darkness.
Yeah, just whether or not it had crept into the actual structures here, or and in the and the yeah, whether or not it had crept in the structures or stayed in the plant matter. And also in these type of ruins, they usually have like some moss or some sort of like stuff that grows in and about or on top of the stone.
Oh yeah.
And he's especially curious in those areas, like does the moss still have the darkness, or has it like in some way crept into the stone or not?
Sure. So let's see. And actually the 14 that matches your intelligence, so that's a though yeah. So for that, basically what you're gonna get is that now that you've had some more time to dig into this darkness phenomena, it's specifically the trees and the leaves on the trees that are having this effect. So like if you come across a bush, it might have it to a lesser degree, but not really, not nearly as much.
Okay.
So like the moss and the plant life that is in the ruins it isn't really drawing in the light the way that the rest of the forest was.
Would it be a fair? Okay, that makes sense.
So if you were to hazard a guess, you would say that it is almost like if you think about it, the trees that grow in the area are the primary carriers of this thing,
Right.
and the rest of the plant life aren't ideal hosts for it.
That makes sense. And or the trees may end up being.
What was that? You
Sorry, guys.
you lost sound.
Yeah, someone was calling me.
Oh.
So it was very loud, and I'm glad it wasn't so loud on your phone, or on you guys' thing. Yeah, so it's either that or the demon. The trees are somehow a part of the demon's body at this point. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's the whole skull implanted in the trees thing to consider.
Yes.
Do we know what direction the demon and or drop-off point for the guy we're looking for is?
The primary altar that the general would have been sent to is at the very heart of the Darkwoods. And from where you're currently at, it would kind of be roughly north.
And you said that there's no that there are sections of the wall that have been crumbled.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this place just rationally is not a safe place. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, it's not OSHA approved.
Certainly not rated for cloud monsters.
Right. Now that having been said, like I mentioned, there are some trees in the ruins, but they aren't nearly as packed as in the forest. So, um, as logically sound as it is that this place isn't safe, it feels like this is the brightest, this is the most light that you've seen in
Right.
hours.
Well, yeah, Maurice is actually he is getting some of the people into a building, getting them out of the open,
Okay.
and basically so they can rest.
Sure.
Oh,
As Maurice, I was making a charisma check for you.
okay. That mine's 14, so that would be 14 would be the.
Yeah, you want to go with the 14, but the difficulty is 15.
Oh, okay. I didn't add it up. All right, yeah. So it didn't
Um,
quite work.
so do you want to spend a coin to do that? Basically, like uh, as you were trying to rally them together, like they don't want to move at all.
Right. I will spend 1 coin to do that.
Okay. Um, yeah, like basically, um, I've just described how this is the most sunlight that you've seen in hours, and basically you've been going deeper and deeper into supernatural darkness. And Maurice is looking at them and going, "Hey, you see that unlit building? Come on, let's let's go in there." They're like, "No." So Maurice, what do you do to convince them that yes, this is the way to go?
I like it. No, this is totally safer. It is a religious sanctuary, obviously, and with protective ruins. You should be safe, quite safe in there.
Okay. And a noble paladin talking about the virtues of being protected in a
Right.
religious building is enough to convince them, and they start hobbling in. Like some of them not aren't even injured; they're just hobbling because it feels appropriate. Um, and they begin to sit on the stone benches inside the building.
Um, do we have any idea if have we assumed the demon's still following us, or
Um,
have we seen it since we ran off?
the uh the the thing that attacked the group has a like it's hard to be surprised by it. It's the kind of thing where when it is in the area, you feel it before it gets close enough to
Right.
attack you. Like there's a visceral you have a spidey sense for it effectively. So you're not sure exactly when it stopped. For all you know, it is simply munching on some of your allies, and then it's going to be on its way. But it's not here right now.
Well, we might have a better chance of fighting it in the light than in the Darkwoods, or we might want to try and get back to our group as soon as we can.
Do we know where they would be located in relation to where we are currently?
They assuming that they weren't all slaughtered, they would and assuming they weren't forced off the like if they're assuming they're able to continue on with the mission, they would be heading towards the center of the Darkwoods, which is to the north of where you guys are.
Dalton looks over at you two and just quick question. Has anyone tried burning the Darkwoods?
Burning?
Yeah, like setting fire to it in mass.
I would imagine that that would have been tried before. I don't think the dark wood burns so much. Would be my guess. I'm not really a native, so I don't.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, and I'll go a step further. And Dalton's been at this for a little bit longer. So the wood, when you as you get more experience with it, the
Yep.
wood from these trees actually is cool to the touch. And at first you just, like took that to like, well, it's always in the shade.
Right.
But after a little bit more experimentation and putzing around with it, like no, in the same way that the wood or that the leaves absorb light, the wood itself like is cold. So like that that feeling when a dark force is around you, the sudden temperature drop and the lights go dim, like these trees are a physical like they have that.
Quick question: do they have sap? Can he
Yes.
cut into one? Is there
Yes.
sap? Okay.
Makes a great syrup.
I didn't bring any pancakes.
It's a hot commodity among evil overlords for their breakfast tables.
Demonic syrup. Okay.
Now with orphan tears.
Yes. As you guys are kind of like debating on what to do, there is from deeper in the compound, there is the it sounds like it was once a large gong. It doesn't have the same resonance that it did way back when, but somebody or something strikes a gong and the sound echoes throughout the ruins.
Well, I really hope this is a good thing.
I mean, it's something, and something's better than nothing, I guess.
Is it though? Is it?
It's at least another creature of some sort of intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
They're just probably wanting to eat us. I don't know. We should investigate.
Yeah.
Dalton will start walking that way.
Good.
Okay.
And follow. I'll kind of motion for the people to kind of just stay where they're at.
They're good with that. They're good with that. Okay, so how are you guys going about investigating? Like just kind of like casually walking, or is there any cautions or preparations made? Does Maurice strut?
He is strutting. He is strutting like he owns the goddamn place, and is very happy to be fighting demons.
Dalton will stop and look back.
Oh, his helmet fell off in the battle, so his hair is long and flowing in the face.
And he said there are no guard towers, but is there any way to peer over the walls before we leave the area that we're in to go?
You could. The two most obvious ways to try to get a look before anybody, struts in. One would be just to try to peek around the corner or peek through, a door. The main building that you're in, it's primarily this one room, then with a couple of smaller rooms further back. But there are back doors that you could look through. The other thing that would probably take more time than you have because Maurice would be to climb on top of the building and look down, which would be the safest, but again a little time consuming.
Yeah. Well, I think in the least peeking around, and so if there's an area in which the the roof is not present, and a doorway in which I can look, maybe grabbing a loose branch or something or a stone from inside and throwing it in one direction that might pull some attention away from my peeking through the door.
Okay. Let's see. Oh. Yeah, you got
Nice.
Oh, nice.
it. Before I describe this, Stephen, you were about to describe Dalton's general approach.
Oh, he just, when we were walking away from all the people, all the red shirts, he probably would have looked back and been like, are you sure you want to leave all these people here? I mean, leaving people in the Darkwood is what you all used to do to sacrifices. And I mean, I don't know how much safer they're going to be just sitting in the middle of nowhere with no way out than they would with, like, you know, you or me or this one. You two seem pretty capable, and you know, I don't know. I'm just I don't know if that's really the best plan.
Well, I don't know if dragging peasants into a tight spot like this would be a very good idea.
I guess I don't understand what the alternative from the tight spot is. But no matter, dear people.
Okay.
You first.
Yeah, so Daz, you are like, first of all, you're going to be able to, like toss a stone, and there's plenty of stone around. You have your pick. And basically, as you look through, like peer around the door, and you kind of get the feeling that once again, like there might have once been actual doors in these like wooden doors that are just gone. You kind of peek around a corner and look out, and what you see is a large open space with three buildings in it. One of which looks like it is one of them is bigger than the others. And then there are two smaller buildings. The other main feature that you see is at the far end of the compound, there is what looks to be a graveyard. And in the center of that graveyard, there is a large stone altar. And it looks like there's an entrance to a crypt right next to the altar. So that's the layout. The